when this talk was first planned, I was going to be speaking on behavior and handling, which is a talk I've done for many, many years at different venues, like, big expos and small veterinary clinics and all over the place. But I asked Margot for permission to change that a little bit and invite Susan Brown as a co-presenter, because she has a lot of wonderful material to add. Susan and I have been collaborating now for how many years? About 5 or 6 years? Yeah, about 5 or 6 years on, on behavior. Because Susan, at a late point in her career, left clinical practice because of her interest in behavior and began developing a lot of material on behavior. She began going to workshops, studying behavior, putting together presentations on behavior. She's much better at technical stuff than I am. She's fantastic at PowerPoint. And we've done a lot of things together. We've done workshops in her home. We've done workshops in humane societies. She's taken a lot of video. And she's what I call a cross-pollinator. She knows people all over the place, and she puts them together. And she began saying to me, she was videoing a lot of the techniques and procedures that I was using on rabbits, and she began to make these comments. And she said, "You're doing the same thing Marty's doing with the llamas." And then she said, "You're doing the same thing the bird people are doing. You're all talking the same language, but you don't know each other." So she began putting us together, introducing us to each other, getting conversations going, which is always really, really productive. So we're going to co-present today. She's put together a wonderful PowerPoint, and the way we work together generally is we kibitz. When one person talks and the other person says, "And don't forget this, and don't forget that." So we'll sort of do that today. This kind of presentation is a little bit unpredictable because we don't know what the rabbits are going to be doing. But our plan is to start with a presentation. We have enough snippets of video footage to show you the points we want to make, regardless of whether the rabbits that are here are acting in their scared ways or their so-called aggressive ways. We can show you that on video, but I'm hoping to do a series of demonstrations as well. So Susan's going to start, and then we're going to stop and do some demos, and then we're going to wrap it up. And we hope to have time for the people who have access to a little bunny at their table. These belong to Susan, by the way, to practice some hands-on things at your table if you want to try that. So without further ado, this is the wonderful Susan Brown.
Oh, yeah, so wonderful. Thank you. And let me say in Mary's behalf, I've known Mary Cotter for many years beyond when, back in when I was in clinical practice as well. But I've learned more about rabbits handling, just even some medical things about rabbits, et cetera, from Mary. Mary is an amazing resource about all things rabbit. And this work that we're presenting today related to how to approach rabbits, handle rabbits, et cetera, is Mary's work. I'm here. I feel very honored to be here with her and help out with maybe some little extra pieces, but this is Mary's work and not my work, and I'm so grateful to her to have taught me these things, and I was able then to teach others in my area. So this is really Mary's. So the little bunnies at your table, we just put them out. It's not like you have to use them or not, but as we get into the demos a little bit later, if you wanted to, go along with, do things along with Mary, we'll have the camera on her. You'll see what she's doing. You can play with them, practice, whatever. But I wanted to also just make a practical note for those of you that are educators. The brown bunnies, those of you that have like this one up here, these are awesome bunnies to teach people things about how to handle rabbits. They're puppets, but you don't need to use the puppet part. They're anatomically decent enough that you can, show some handling techniques, etc. I use them at the spay-neuter clinic that I do once a month for clients that want to know how to trim nails or hold a rabbit, etc. We can play with that pet rabbit first before they start doing things on their own rabbit.
And one quick kibitz on that. We know that many of you in this audience are really wonderful rabbit handlers, and we were even wondering whether you'd bother to get up and come to a presentation like this because you've been handling rabbits for many, many years. So the thrust of this presentation really is to give you a way to think about behavior that you can use when you educate the people to whom you're adopting, or your shelter workers that you work with, your collaborators, your colleagues. It's just a different way to look at behavior and talk about it.
Yeah, and you can come here, but you have a microphone.
Okay.
Oh, the puppets are folk manny. I think if you
they're
look
not
on.
made anymore. they're out of production.
No, I actually can still get the brown ones.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, I
Okay,
just
'cause-
ordered some more.
Okay, because
Yeah.
the big ones are gone.
Oh,
Yeah, they're gone.
folk, if you grab a label, it's folk,
Folkmanis.
yeah, folk manis. There are also these little lop rabbits. They're not quite as good. And then we have some Angoras. They don't have the long legs, but check them out. They're reasonably priced. Okay, let's get moving here. Okay, so you guys, all of you out there, my mother would kill me if I said you guys. Her voice is in my head, going, guys, that's not correct. You wonderful people. So you know how to handle rabbits probably very well. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is sort of being extremely observant in working with some of the problems that we have with rabbits, which is, we'll get into, is most often issues with fear. But to observe behavior in another organism is really important. We just sort of have to take ourselves out of the mix. We really have to make that organism the focus, not ourselves. We really need to put aside our judgments of that animal, our expectations of what that animal should or should not be doing, either as an individual or as a species, and our value judgments. It's really important because we'll go over this repeatedly, it changes how we interact with that animal. So behavior is something an animal does. It's not what it is. Something that it is physically doing, and it can be internal behavior. You can have internal behavior. Thinking is a behavior, for example. Most of what we're going to be talking about today, though, is going to be what you can see on the outside. How can I manage the behavior that I'm seeing on the outside? How can I change that by changing what I'm doing? Behavior has a function. It's not just randomly out there. It has a function. And the principles of behavior, which are some of the laws, apply to all species, not just to rabbits, not just to people. These principles that we'll talk about apply to cockroaches, up to humans. The principles are the same. And it's really important, like you see the little bunny picture on the bottom. All species of animals, including ourselves, we're learning what works and what doesn't work every second of the day, unless you're asleep. Okay? So they're always trying to figure out what's working, what doesn't. Even if you're not paying attention to them, they're paying attention to everything that's going on around them. Now, one of the obstacles that we can, isn't that a creepy picture? I know it's very creepy. There's a reason for that picture. Could have been a woman's face, but whatever. One of our big obstacles to really developing a relationship with an animal, and you're going to see this with your clients all the time, is we like to label things. It helps us to make a quick judgment, sort it out. This person he's angry. I don't want to be around him. This person, he is, happy. I want to be around him. I mean, there's all kinds of labels. But those labels help our brain make a quick judgment and say, okay, this is safe, this is not safe, right? But we do this with our animals. We say things like, oh, he's so smart. He's so stupid. Oh, he's spiteful. He's doing that on purpose, right? He's mean. He's so mean. He's just a mean rabbit. I'm going to dump him off at a shelter. He's dominant. He's dominating me. He's trying to be the boss, okay? These are all labels, okay? These are things saying what an animal is. Remember, I told you behavior is what an animal does, not what it is. But these labels are based on behaviors that the animal has been displaying. Lunging, biting. Oh, he's dominant. Oh, he's dominant. That's it. Boom, finished. He's in a box, dominant. So unfortunately, labels don't solve any problems. They just put a name on them. They don't do anything towards solving a problem. If you believe a label, it changes our interactions because the focus becomes on how we feel about it, not on what's actually going on. Yes? And it moves, this is the really bad part here, it moves the responsibility for behavior change onto the animal and not onto us for modifying our behavior or the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So when clients, this is one thing, you have to be really gentle with clients when you start trying to change, when they say, oh, he's so mean. Well, let's talk about what that means and gently move them away. We're going to talk about a better way of dealing with these behaviors. But try to start moving clients away from labels. gradually and gently, because they just are very damaging. The dominance label, we're not going to get in, we don't have enough time to go through lots and lots of all the details, but I did want to mention that. It's not as bad, I notice, with rabbits as with birds, for example, or dogs. It's huge, dominance, he's trying to dominate me. But it's very rare that animals are actually being, quote, dominant. What's often how dominance is used, it's an explanation for any behavior that the animal exhibits when they're resisting what we want them to do. Then it's dominant. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Dominance doesn't even need to be in the discussion. Okay, this is just a quick little list. Some of the dangers of labels. They can't be verified. It's just some name you came up for a bunch of behavior. There's nothing you can scientifically verify. I can't verify that he's angry. I can't verify I don't mean that he's angry, that he's mean, that he's spiteful, that he's any of these things. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say the animal is mean, that's how you're going to treat it, and the animal's probably going to get, quote, meaner, okay? So that doesn't work. Provides a convenient excuse. Like I said, well, I can't do anything with him. He's just, I tried, but he's just a mean rabbit. I'm just going to get rid of him, right? Or he's going to sit in a cage all the time and never come out. It predisposes us to use overbearing and forceful management strategies. This often ends in punishment. Well, I'm going to beat not with rabbits so much, but we definitely see it in other animals. He wants to try to bite me, well, I'm going to smack him in the head, instead of obviously much better strategies. And it just, you're done. You don't even look for cause or search anymore.
Can I add something here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, one way to think about labels versus descriptions is that descriptions that we're talking about will involve some kind of measurement or counting, and labels can't.
Yeah.
For example, I'm always cold. People say, oh, it's hot in here. I say, I am freezing. It's cold in here. And Susan will say, it's hot in here. How do we decide whether the room is actually cold or hot? We've agreed on using a certain measure, and that's a thermometer. We walk over to the thermometer, we see that it's 80 degrees in the room, and I'm shivering, and then at that point we decide there's probably something wrong with me. It has nothing to do with the room. But that's the difference between a label and an observation. An observation involves counting or measuring. So when you say a rabbit is mean, that's a value judgment on your part. And what you want to do is you want to get to the bottom of your value judgment and find out what measures you might use to describe a rabbit instead of using the word mean. You might say, for example, he advanced at my hand 4 times, and 2 of those 4 times he bit me. Now that's a description. That's not a value judgment. Whether the rabbit is mean or not, we haven't established. Mean is a shorthand kind of a description we use that's not the kind of description we want to use in general. But we all talk this way. We're probably going to continue to talk this way just in the interest of time. You may hear us say that today, like a really aggressive rabbit. But underneath it all, what we're going for is observations that can be counted or measured. And after those are counted or measured, we put labels on them to use as shorthand. We need to remember that they're only shorthand.
Right. So we're just going to do a quick example. There's the attack rabbit there. Okay. So you have a rabbit that's lunging when approached, and it's labeled aggressive. Okay? So we haven't picked it apart, as Mary said, which we'll talk about in a minute, a better way of describing what the rabbit is doing. But it's labeled. Okay, it comes to you, it's aggressive. So your conclusion is, well, he's mean, dominant, stupid, whatever reasons he may have for being aggressive. You've come up with that. Well, first of all, do you actually know that's true? Do you actually know that he's dominant? Do you actually know that he's stupid? Do you actually know that he's mean? These are just terms that we're applying. Is it possible that he's frightened? Is it possible that he's in pain? Is it possible that he's actually trying to play? Because we haven't bothered to observe everything. Does this thought influence your observation and interactions and emotions about a rabbit? You can close your eyes, you can think of a rabbit, and you can think, he's really mean. What happens to you when you think that? Or you can think, oh my God, he's the cutest little bunny ever. What happens to your emotions when you think about that? What happens, you can just close your eyes and do that, and like this, your emotions can go, oh, I want to touch him. Oh, no, I don't want to touch him. Okay? So you just stop trying to modify your behavior and blame the rabbit. All right. So here's what Mary was talking about. What we want to do, instead of labeling behavior, we actually want to describe what's going on. So you have a client come to you and say, the rabbit is aggressive. Oh, well, that's can you explain to me what he does and under what circumstances? And you get them to explain. Then they may even go to another label and say, well, he's just mean when I open the door. Okay, what does that look like to you? What does mean look like? Well, he runs to the door, he boxes, he nips, whatever that might be. Start picking it, getting it down to, okay, these are the specific behaviors that he is displaying. Then we have something we can work with. We can't work with changing a label. I can't train happy. I can't train thoughtful. I can't do any of that. But I can change whether he's lunging, nipping, biting, running away. Those are things I can work with.
And the phrase Susan used, under what circumstances, I use a similar phrase, similar meaning, under what conditions. And this is a good question when you're taking a rabbit in from a shelter that has put a label on the animal, from an owner, if you do owner intakes. Instead of saying, what's your rabbit like? And the owner's saying, it's aggressive, it's dominant, he's, awful rabbit, mean rabbit. Ask the person, under what conditions do you observe what behaviors? Well, he's really mean. Every time I open the cage, he lunges forward to bite. That's a description. That's not a label. Under what conditions does he run away? Well, every time my child walks into the room, he runs away. Under what circumstances? That's the operative phrase for us.
Okay, so I think everybody here understands the difference. We don't need to go through a bunch of examples, but the bottom line is what we're going for when we drop our labels, and we're going to use some of the techniques that we're going to talk about today and all. What we're looking for in the bigger picture is empowerment of the animal. We're trying to have, whatever species it is, an animal that has some personal control over its environment. They're not being coerced or forced into doing behaviors, whether it's just being, picked up in a way that they don't have any say in the matter. Okay? Of course we're going to pick them up, but we can do it, just go in and grab them and forcibly do it, or do it with some of the techniques we're going to talk about today, where they're more having to say, okay, I'm willing to work with you on this. Okay? Give them an opportunity, as it says, number 2 there. Animals have a right to say no. Okay? Some people misinterpret that and say, well, if they have a right to say no, they'll always say no, and they'll never get anything done. And that's not the case, that's why we're going to teach you about how you can modify their behavior or change your behavior, of course, to get them to cooperate with you. It's important because if you think about this with humans, there's zillions of examples. You can see it in the news every day. You probably have friends. When you have a loss of personal control over your environment, where you feel, whether it's in your head or physically, like you're in jail, okay, where you cannot have much say about what goes on around you, you can develop, these are all scientifically been studied for many years. You can develop a variety of things. One can be a feeling of helplessness. Well, I'm just going to give up and I'm not going to do anything. Have you ever seen rabbits that just sort of fly under the radar all the time? I'm just going to do the minimum, just hoping nothing, I'm just not going to do too much because something bad might happen. You can get loss of motivation. It sort of goes along with that, don't want to do much, want to sit around, don't want to play with toys, don't want to do anything. Increased aggression, it can go the opposite direction. I know everyone here has seen rabbits that were, handled inappropriately and it just escalated and they just got more aggressive. Either I'm going to punch my way out of this or I'm just going to lie there and just accept it. And then there's medical problems that have been studied in both humans and animals. High blood pressure. If you have if you don't perceive you have a lot of control over your environment, high blood pressure, it's a big one. Gastric ulcers in many species, that's in ferrets, is really, really big in ferrets. And there are some other conditions that take place. So empowerment, and what we're talking about again is allowing them to make some choices. Yes, we will have to pick them up. Yes, they will have to go to the vet and get a shot and do all these sorts of things. But we can do it in a way where they're willing to have some participation in that. And the last thing I want to say about this slide, we're not going to show anything about this, but I just think it's very exciting and I think it's nice for you all to know about this. If you're not in the zoo community, because I go to a lot of conferences with zoo trainers, et cetera, it is incredibly amazing what they're doing with those animals, which of course are in captivity, they're forced to be there, where they're training some of the techniques we talk about here, and then also going on to specific training. We have animals everywhere now that are literally walking up to get to get the blood drawn, to get injections. An amazing story I heard about a giraffe who has arthritis, who learned to come and ask a specific keeper for the massage that helped her arthritis feel better. I mean, it is I just get chills thinking about it. It just gets me teary-eyed to think about this stuff that can happen. But at where we are here with rabbits, we can be very humane and work with some of these things. We're not going to talk about, teaching techniques to teach them how to, walk over and get a shot. We're going to talk with more basic things today. But those are things you can teach. Okay, so that's the exciting thing. The world is changing. It is a gradual change, but it is changing. Okay?
No,
okay. All right, so why is behavior important? Who cares? Well, I think you guys already know. But I just want this little slide here because I think this is a basic thing we need to remember as we're working with any animal and people. People are the same. We're all behaving to either acquire things of value, and the value is in the eye of the learner, of the one that's acquiring it. It may not be valuable to you, but it's valuable to them. So we don't make judgments on what's valuable. A toy might be valuable to one bunny and have no consequence to another. This space might be valuable to one bunny, and the other one is like, I never want to go in that space, right? So obvious things like food and water and all that kind of stuff, but all right. So we are doing one of two things. We're moving sort of towards and trying to acquire what we as an individual feel we need to survive, and we're moving away from things that we find aversive or uncomfortable, painful, whatever. Aversive just means something we don't want to be around, right? So keep that in mind when you're working with rabbits. If they're moving away, then there's something in the environment, probably you, which is part of the environment, may be aversive, okay? So, and it's also important that behavior evolves. We talk about evolution of species and all that kind of thing, but in your lifetime, your behavior is always evolving and changing to keep you safe and to keep you, get the things you want and stay away from the things you don't want.
And I want to add a quick point here. I think what Susan said about the individual and what's rewarding to the individual is really important here. I work at a shelter as a volunteer in a training program for dogs too, and you would be astounded to see that there are actually many of you wouldn't, you work with dogs, but for those of you that aren't dog people, there are dogs that really don't care about treats no matter what treat you have, and we have one in our shelter now who only cares about balls. And he will do anything for a ball, to the point that we have to deprive him of playing with balls until he does something that we want him to do, because that is his greatest love in life. He'll do anything for balls, nothing else. So what Susan's saying is really important, because you say, well, I tried giving a papaya tablet, I tried doing this, I tried doing that, and it didn't work. Well, it didn't work for that rabbit. So that's really important, individual differences.
Exactly. So again, just a little reminder that these principles that we'll talk about, we're not going to get into huge discussion of behavior science, but just the things you guys need at the basic level here. These apply to everybody. And yesterday when I made that comment about being compassionate towards people that do these horrible things to animals, this doesn't mean they don't need to suffer the consequences of their actions and things like that. But they are under the same rules that those rabbits and everybody else is. They're just trying to get what they think is valuable and get away from things that they don't think is valuable. And sometimes acquiring these things, these animals and things, they have a big hole in their, in losses, et cetera, whatever, and they're just acquiring. There's all kinds of things that may be going on. The point is that we need to start with compassion and then move outward from there. So remember that they're the same, dealing with the same laws as these animals are. So with careful observation of current behavior, we can use these laws to change behavior. So as Mary was just saying, behavior is a study of one. It's important for you all to know about the biology and behavior of a rabbit. That's called ethology. Ethology being the study of species. That's good, important information to know. That sort of background, what sort of rabbits evolved to do, what do they do in the wild, et cetera, et cetera. But, as Mary said, you're working with one individual. And it may be that dogs as a species love treats. Love meat. Liver. I can tell you there's a lot of laboratories I've worked with that could care less about a piece of liver, but give them a ball and they'll do anything for you, like this dog in the shelter, okay? So you have to remember, it's great to have that background information, but you are working with this individual in front of you, and there's no judgments on what that individual finds valuable. You work with that. You work within their world. You're not trying to drag them back into your world saying, hey, you should like this, what's wrong with you? That's the labeling again. I also will make a quick comment here. My father had Alzheimer's disease, and then some of you may be dealing with individuals that are getting older, like myself, that you're just getting dementia and whatever. So it's the same. When you start working with animals this way, it's the same when you work with people that are starting to alter what their reality is. You want to go to where they are. It's their world at that point, and not keep trying to drag them back to what you think the world should be like, and work with even some of these techniques that we're going to talk here about observation and all, and just go where they are and be where they are and work with them where they are, okay? And that's what you're doing here, okay? This little picture, just real quick, this was a pigeon, but pigeons don't normally take care of baby bunnies, right? So this is the individual thing. But this pigeon was taking care of this little nest of baby wild rabbits. Okay, so now there's two learning processes, not great detail. I'll just say respondent and operant, and where we're going to be spending our time today is in respondent behavior. I will just briefly mention, because we're not going to go into it, operant behavior is pretty much what we call learned behavior, all the stuff that you do that's not inborn, that's not instinctual, all those other kinds of behaviors. But with rabbits and problems that you see in rabbits, the vast majority of problem behaviors come from your respondent behavior. They have a start there. Certainly there is learned behavior along the way, but they have their real roots in the respondent behavior. This is the behavior that's sort of built in already, your reflexes, your instincts. These are behaviors associated with emotions like fear, anxiety, joy. The point to remember here is the animals don't have to learn new behavior. What they're learning are new things that set off that behavior, which is called a trigger, okay? So you don't have to learn how to blink your eye. You know how to blink your eye, yeah? But different things may cause you to blink your eye. First, it might be a puff of air. Now, if the puff of air was associated with the sound of a balloon popping right before, after, we're gonna go through this in a minute, but the sound of the balloon after a while might cause you to blink your eye even before the puff of air, and we're gonna go through how that happens. So that's a trigger. So if you take a trigger that you already know and you pair it with one that didn't have any significance before, pretty soon that second one will now get significance. So let's go through, go with this one. Respondent behaviors are the basic building blocks that keep us safe and healthy. This is your fight, flight, freeze behaviors, which we're going to be working with in rabbits. That's where not you guys, oh, my mother. That's where you are dealing with a lot of issues.
I want to add something to that. And the reason we're sticking to respondent behavior here rather than operant behavior, which is equally interesting, is because most rabbits that are relinquished or dumped to shelters are there because of some series of respondent behaviors that have gotten so out of hand in the owner's eyes that they just can't live with the rabbit anymore.
Right. So, and sometime another time we'll give a talk about how fun it is to train rabbits to do things like, give you a kiss and go through an agility course and things like that. Okay, so let's just do a quick example. So, you start with hand reaches in the cage quickly. Just, you thrust your hand in the cage, rabbit runs to the back of the cage, okay? So the presence of the hand is aversive. He's sitting in his cage. He's going to move away from it, right? So the trigger for the respondent behavior of, we're going to say, anxiety or fear, he's at least running away, so he's probably concerned, he's anxious or fearful, he runs to the back of the cage. Okay, now next, I'm talking as I go up to the cage and stick my hand into the cage. So what happens is, now he just has to hear me come by the cage and he moves to the back of the cage, even before I stick my hand in the cage. So that was the pairing. Before, my voice didn't mean anything. I could walk around and talk to the rabbit and everything's fine. Once I stuck my hand in the cage and the rabbit ran away, now I'm talking when I stick my hand in the cage. It's scary for him every time I'm sticking my hand in the cage. Now all he has to do is hear my voice, and he's moving to the back of the cage before I stick my hand in. All right, so that's what happens next. So it can go on to generalize to other people as well, okay? Just I hear a human voice, now I'm going to the back of the cage, if this happens enough times. So other things can be paired with it. We see this certainly in other species, and I'm sure also in rabbits. Perfume. We'll see sometimes if an animal smells, I see this in the veterinary clinic, an animal smells a certain perfume that's associated with the person that stuck their hand in the cage. They smell the perfume, they move to the back of the cage, okay? Gloves, long hair, hats. In a veterinary clinic, how many of you they see the guy with the white coat on, because that guy has grabbed that rabbit I don't know how many times. I'll give you a very quick, wonderful example, and what's so wonderful, but birds. In birds, we used to flip the lights out to catch the bird in the cage, right? So, interestingly, there was this interesting phenomenon that back then I had no idea what was going on, that it was particularly cockatiels would at night develop what we called a night fright. And at night, they'd flutter and fall off their perch, and it wasn't happening before they had started seeing a veterinarian. So later on, I figured out what was happening was all they had to have was this horrible experience of having the light flipped off and then being grabbed out of a cage a few times. So at night, when they'd flip the lights off in the house, they thought a horrible hand was going to come in, and they'd flutter and fall off the cage.
And you guys,
Go.
your mother, you all have probably had a similar experience when you take your rabbits to a vet with the carrying case. As soon as you pick up the carrying case, the rabbit is gone, right? They know, my rabbits know the sound of the handle as it flops back onto the top, and they are out of there.
Yeah. So I think you get the idea that this is Pavlov's dog thing, by the way. If you all know about Pavlov's dog, they showed him the meat, he salivates. They ring the bell, and they show him the meat that's paired together. Then after a while, all you have to do is ring the bell, and he salivates, right? So what I'm trying to say is you can develop triggers without knowing it all over the place around these behaviors. This is why it's important, as we're going to show you today, how your behavior should be around a rabbit to not have this happen. So why should you care? Okay? Because eliciting behavior associated with fear or anxiety is one of the biggest obstacles to developing a relationship with any animal, whether it's a human being or a dog or a rabbit. Frightening experiences can be paired with many triggers. We've gone over that. Now, this is just a tiny little fun fact, but I found this very interesting. That memories associated with fear, like have you ever had the experience like you have a car wreck or something happens and everything looks like it's in slow motion, right? It's like so scary it's just something that was so unexpected and so awful, right? It's just like everything seems to slow down. There's a reason for that. That's because those neuronal pathways are being laid down so densely. It's so dense that it gives you the impression that everything's slowing down. But what does that mean? That means that you have this really dense, strong memory in there about this experience of something, grabbing you or, hurting you or whatever. It's really hard to get around that, okay? We can get around it, of course, but it just makes more work later, okay? And then the final thing, we just want to avoid creating all this to start with, because it's less to correct later, right? Okay, so now the important thing, we're going to get sort of into more of the meat of how are we going to do this? How are we going to kind of prevent this from happening, or how are we going to manage it once it's happened and you're presented with these animals that are already biting, lunging, doing all these things? So the really critical thing is you need to be a good observer. Take your labels away, take your expectations away, take all that away, and really learn to look at early signs of fear and anxiety to avoid escalating it. Because you want to be able to respond to the animal early, listening, responding, and not let it escalate. You also need to know what it looks like when a rabbit is calm or a rabbit is relaxed, because that's what you're going for. That's your goal, right? And then you can read that. It's just, you'll see this over and over again today. There's just all kinds of things you're going to look at: body tension, eyes, ears, feet positioning, etc. okay?
And many people in this room are really good at that. When
Yes.
Margot was doing her demonstration yesterday, remember a lot of times when one rabbit would start to approach the other, I heard people go,
Yes.
like that. Before there was any physical contact, you could already see the ears went back, the
Yes.
body got tense, the tail went up. That's what we're
Yes.
talking about here.
And it's good for you to go back home now and really start, we talked about that term, operationalize. Start thinking about how could you, if you haven't already done that, how can you verbalize this to someone who's new with rabbits and stuff, to start looking at what when you see this, then the rabbit's probably about to do this and you need to respond in this way. Okay, so the consequence of ignoring those early signals, okay? So we said we want to recognize early when an animal is uncomfortable, frightened, anxious, whatever, but you can see that they're moving away from you, and remember I told you, they're going to move away from things that are aversive initially. So first, they'll just run away. Oh, actually, let me have you do this one. I'm going to have you do this. This is your list.
You
I
have
want
to
you
push
explain
the-
it. You just push the,
Okay.
just push the space bar.
I'm a tech dummy.
Okay.
Okay, so early on, these are prey species, as you know, and the first thing they'll try to do, as many prey species will, is just get out of there. They'll run away. If they can't get away, and remember, a cage situation is a situation where a rabbit cannot get away. No matter how big the cage is, he has limited options, so he's going to move as far as he can to get away. So first he'll try to get away. The next thing he'll do is, maybe, this is a tentative list, you may see other orders, but he'll start to dig or nip at objects first, like a little anxiety sign there, and then he'll get away. And then he may, if the stimulus persists, like if the hand continues coming toward him, you may see him start to grunt while moving away. You've all heard that vocalization, right? That right before they move away. And then you might see boxing and grunting before he moves away. You might see the rabbit start to pick up his front claws and go at you or at your hand. If that doesn't work, you're forcing the rabbit to escalate his signals still further, which is nipping and grunting and then going away. He'll do whatever you're, in a way, you are not listening. I came in with a shirt to this conference, one of those very cute cartoon shirts, and it was a rabbit doing this with a label that said not listening. And that, sometimes we do that with our rabbits, and really what we're doing when we continue to advance on a rabbit and he's giving us all these signals, we're forcing him to escalate the signals, and then we end up with a label like aggression or aggressive. The rabbit wasn't doing that early on. We just didn't see or hear what he was trying to communicate, and we continued to advance. It's almost like if you're asleep in bed at night and you're in, let's say you live in a high crime area, you keep a revolver under your pillow, right? You're asleep in bed and you hear a home invasion, somebody's coming into your home. You grab that gun right away, right? You go out, you go running out because you didn't hear any of the early signals. You didn't hear the guy breaking in, you didn't have time to call the police, there was nothing left. You grab the gun and you shoot. So the idea here is for us to be working with these animals in a way that will allow us to observe and interpret their early signals so that they don't have to escalate those signals, so that you don't create a rabbit that ends up with a label like aggressive or dominant. Now, do we have one more? Yeah. And then finally, we have defensive, lunging, nipping, and grunting all at the same time, where now he's really lashing out, and you can count the number of times he does it. And if that doesn't work, we end up with the last point I added here, which I called anticipatory, lunging, nipping, and grunting. And with that, I had in mind a rabbit that we had in the shelter years ago that had earned herself the name of Jaws in the shelter. Because when a shelter worker would come in to feed her or change her cage, she would do this. Like the picture you saw, like the photo. She would literally hold her mouth open in anticipation of biting. She had been ignored for so long. The one thing she got to that would make people back off was holding her mouth open like that. And people would go, oh my God, I'm not changing her cage. Somebody else can do that. So that's the consequences, or those are the consequences we see if we ignore early signals. It just escalates. You might add little other steps or change
Right.
some of these.
And so essentially, we've caused them to go from a whisper to a scream, okay?
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
And just from a whisper to a scream, when people say this rabbit bites with no warning, that's a rabbit whose early signals have been ignored for so long that he just doesn't bother offering them anymore.
So as you watch us, this will be repeated, but as you watch Mary go through demos, and we're looking at demos here, you'll see us often, something that people question. When an animal shows those early signs, you'll see us giving them their space for that sign, and some people with traditional training, particularly of, you know, dogs and things like that, they'll be saying, oh, well, you're allowing him to, you know, you're reinforcing him or allowing him to behave in a way that, you know, he's getting away from you. You shouldn't allow that. This is really common in birds. It's really common for people and parrots to say, well, you just got to hang on to him and, you know, force him to step up on your hand. You just got to keep shoving your hand underneath him and okay? So, but what we want to do, I want you to sort of keep this in your mind. What we want to do is actually reinforce or reward them for giving us those early signs. I want those early signs. I want that to be all the signs they have to show for me to listen, pay attention, and then change my behavior. I don't want them to escalate. So it's good. If you cannot take away all the signs, if you took away all ways for you to be able to tell somebody else, you know, back off, you're bothering me, you would be defenseless. That's not fair, okay? So keep that in mind. We want those early signs because we can use those.
And just an example again from the dog world, many people here may be familiar with the phenomenon of people who punish their dogs for growling. A dog will growl at a stranger and you'll hear the owner go, no, stop it, stop it. And what happens is the growling disappears.
Right.
And the next step is put in its place. So instead of giving you that warning now, the dog will bite at some point, maybe not immediately, but often enough, when he feels that signal of stop it at his neck, he's going to bite instead of growling. So
and that is a hugely important concept because traditional training for a lot of animals is you don't want them to act in any way, quote, aggressive. You have to allow animals, like a parrot, you have to allow him to lean away. You have to allow him to give you body language that says, you're pushing me, I don't want to do this, okay? All right, so that's a big one. All right, so we're going to just show a little, you're going to comment on these. This is the little short.
Okay.
I did the short one, and then
Okay,
there's a
so
longer one.
we
This is
have a
very
little
short.
piece of video footage. Since we don't know the rabbits that Joy has lined up, I haven't met yet. But just in case we don't get the quote-unquote aggressive behaviors, we wanted to show some snippets of video. Susan has been making these videos for a long time now. And this is just a little piece of rabbit behavior that happened in a clinic where a rabbit had been dumped and then from the shelter taken into the clinic. And this rabbit is already at a more advanced stage of resisting human approach.
Now, this is the tiny one, and then the longer one.
one,
This
yeah.
is just the really,
Okay.
okay, ready? So,
That's all you need to see. So this rabbit's no longer just moving to the far corner. By the time the rabbit ended up in the shelter or wherever he was left, he had already moved up a few stages, so he wasn't going to just run away. Now he's moving forward, boxing, lunging, whatever it is.
So to reduce fear and anxiety or uncomfortable feeling in the animal, the behaviors associated with that, we're using a process called, there's a couple. There's desensitization, opening up, don't worry about that term. Oh, you're going to open up a dialogue through observation of body language and respect for what you see and hear. And I've seen these 3 steps. I know Mary uses these similar steps. I know other trainers use these steps. It's sort of nice to put it in this concept, however you want to state it. The first step is you're sort of checking in. Some people like to use the term checking in. You're checking in with the animal, and before you start, just your presence there, and then your hand and whatever else you're going to do. The first question is this okay? And that's where you're looking for those early signs of discomfort. Okay, you're looking for the early signs. No discomfort, comfortable, you can proceed on. Then as you see anything that is, you're watching, you say, I hear you. Okay, this is not comfortable for you. You modify your behavior. And then there's always the thank you. The thank you can be anything from, it's a reinforcer. It could be the thank you that, okay, I heard you, I'm moving away now. Thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna modify my behavior now. I appreciate it, okay? So you'll see this. I think we've got this is the little bit longer aggression in the
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
You ready?
Yeah.
So this is a same rabbit, actually.
I'll do it very briefly. The whole thing is just like, he's letting me know when I'm doing it too long, he pushes away. It's just too much for him to tolerate. So the trick is always finding how much is just the right amount to tolerate. See, he didn't push up that time or get tense. Now, if I had the nerve,
Watch
Watch
his
his
eye.
eyes.
Watch his eye.
if I had the nerve, I'd like to cover his
Watch
eye.
that eye. Right there.
Did you see when he opened his eye? That was too much. I'm doing this for the video, so we're, just what we're talking about. What's too much for him? That's too much. Look at his ears.
But you don't pursue him, you let him.
Right.
Only thing I have control over is my mouth.
Oh, he's so fierce. I'm just enjoying this angry, nervous eating. I don't have to be afraid of you. Watch this, I'm gonna eat. You're nobody.
You hopped right over your hand.
Oh.
My head is just resting.
Just raise my elbow.
Think in terms of what happens at a shelter when the poor shelter worker goes to clean the rabbit's cage, right? Normally, they don't have the time, at least in their own minds or schedules, they don't have the time to not reach in and get the rabbit stuff and move it out.
You're doing the litter box. What I love is at no time is that animal being chased around the cage. He's allowed to figure this out. Oh, I'm sorry.
This will earn a lot of rabbits a cage card that says PTS.
Yeah, euthanasia.
See, but what'll happen tomorrow morning is they'll go to give him food and he'll charge and bite and they'll be reactive to. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. Now, right about now, I'd like to have a vegetable. Now I'm gonna just move a little more. Oh, good. That's actually terrific for him.
That was good that he moved away at that point. That's what you want. If he's nervous, now he's grooming.
He's calmer than he was a few minutes ago.
Hey, you, look what I know. Look what I know.
Any other comments?
I think it speaks
Because
for
we're almost to the point of, oh, this was this one. This was the last one, and then I think we'll be into.
Okay, I think so.
Ready?
Yep.
So this was one that we did at the local animal control, where they have really awful cages, but typical of a lot of places with this small door. And so Mary, this was a rabbit. A little quick history on the rabbit. It was a lunger. It was a problem. The shelter staff is wonderful. They'd worked with her a little bit, but she was only really good with certain individuals. So Mary had never seen this rabbit.
Whether that's going to allow me to.
Yeah, they told me she doesn't let herself be taken out of her cage.
How likely the rabbit is to bite just because I have hands. The other thing that I do, and some people don't do this, is if I can, I take out all hiding boxes before trying to take the rabbit out, because the rabbit is going to want to take shelter in the hiding box, and then getting them out of that is a nightmare. And I generally touch them on the head first, very lightly. A couple times I move my hand and see if the rabbit is already programmed to go after my hand or not. This rabbit is inquisitive. To take anything out of a rabbit cage, it makes your life easier if you can manage to find a way to cover the rabbit's eyes. It's their stuff, it's their possessions. So for example, if I want to take her food bowl out, I would prefer that she not look at my hand while I'm doing that. So I do that. Cover her eye on this side so she can't see it. It's just more peaceful. She's very revved up right now. Can you see that? They're like horses, sort of. She's, her posture is pushed up. Her ears, everything is just going up. I don't know how she's going to react. I don't know.
What does that mean when she puts her ears down and says?
She's still leery of somebody coming in and into her space right now, so I'm just taking it slow. And the funny thing is, we see this in the clinic all the time. If you rush to do this, they say, we gotta get this done, we gotta get this done. The personnel who do that always end up taking longer,
Yeah.
because they get it done first quickly, but not right, and the rabbit struggles, and they have to end up putting the rabbit down and starting again from scratch. That's really tough. If you can just slow down and let the rabbit have a little bit of comfort zone around you first, it's easier. I don't know if she's gonna let me get this out at this point. I'm gonna try to close her eyes and move it over. There. And she should be jumping inside this or into her ear lobe, either way, but I have to hold on it now, so I can get it. Very slowly.
She's giving this rabbit a lot of opportunities to respond, to have a say in how quickly this moves on by slowing down.
With how much pressure she'll allow. Once I start moving her around, she may resist a few times. I'm just gonna alternate moving her with patting her. And then I'm gonna, what I'm working for here is I'm gonna try to get my elbow close to her face and see if she'll allow me to pick her up like this by making my hand into a brace. To her like this, straight out, and then just tucking her under my arm like that. If you can do that with a rabbit, see, this didn't take very long,
Yeah.
but it took much longer than doing it fast.
Yeah.
But then you have to do it fast again, and then you have to do it fast again, and then 3 fast repetitions take longer than 1 slow repetition,
Yeah.
and you have a rabbit now who will work with you. She's not, see, she's not trying to do, but she's not trying to do anything that's
Yeah.
real alarming or violent or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't usually stand around with them. Once they're out, I take them and I put them down on a table and I start working with them on a table. Or I put them into a carrying case, which if we have one, we could do that.
So if you went in and did that quickly, over and over, we just learned about triggers. What's going to happen the second day they go in to get it quickly? And the third day, it won't take very long before that rabbit just escalates that behavior. If you go in more slowly, perhaps the first time, the second time you won't have to go as slow. I mean, the rabbit will give you more permission. Okay, it's okay, nothing bad happened last time. And it will actually get quicker over time. So, big difference. I'm sorry, you probably have more to say.
No,
I
that's,
loved
I think
it.
it's, anybody have
loved it.
questions about that? Kind of speaks for itself,
No.
yes.
I just wanted to point out an issue I had. I had a little rabbit that would, when I come in to do the, cage and everything, I put a shelf at the back of the standard dog crate for them, for to have some extra exercise. And she would growl and go through all of this behavior, and she liked raisins. So I started putting raisins up on the shelf. And when I would come, after a couple of times, when I come in the room to clean the cage, she would be sitting on the shelf waiting for me.
Yeah, that's up.
So it is kind of understanding what will get accomplished without creating and I was amazed. I thought, wow, she's learned that fast, a couple of times.
And that's that operant behavior where we're training them. It's a little, it's brilliant. One of the things we do at the shelter is when new rabbits come in, they'll have a treat, they'll have a little cup towards the front of the cage, and because it's in a very busy hallway, we'll have people walk by and just drop a treat, not stand and linger or anything, just walk by and drop a couple of pellets or whatever into that little bin. Okay, and after a while, humans mean, oh, I think I need to be at the front of my cage right over here because the good things happen. I don't need to be hiding in the back of my cage, right?
And I want to add
Yeah.
one thing to that. One thing you want to be really careful about is when you do what you're talking about, which is terrific, you don't want to follow that treat with something that's really aversive.
Yes, yes.
For example, if you want to take the rabbit out of her cage and you're trying to lure her to that shelf in order to have easier access, which doesn't sound like you're doing, I'm just giving an example. What happens after a while is the rabbit will refuse to take the treat because it works in reverse too. The rabbit has
Yeah.
now learned that when that treat appears, somebody's about to grab
Yeah,
it.
perfect.
And we see
Perfect.
same things with dogs too.
The only thing I did was clean out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she would get up and out of the way. She
No,
would
this is
watch.
not, this is
And
not-
that's called stationing, if you want to know what that's called. In the zoo world, that's called stationing. You get an animal to stay in one place while you get to do other things, okay?
So,
you have
where is
35
Joy?
minutes.
I don't know where Joy is. Joy.
You
Joy
ready
is
for
in
me to
charge of the
switch?
rabbits here, and I know she has some rabbits to work with.
And are we ready
So-
to switch to the camera?
Any rabbits you have?
Ready for the camera?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, it's all you.
Yeah. Okay, so I prepared this little sheet. It's a little bit misleading because it looks like a nice orderly linear list.
Does everyone have that sheet, by the way? If not, okay, good, sorry.
And actually, this is a kind of a holistic process. You should put all these things in a circle rather than a straight line. It's not that one of these leads to another. These are individual concepts that I just wanted to go over quickly and demonstrate a few things using them. I think we have a rabbit coming.
Yep, she wants to know what you want.
You tell
You
me.
want big, little?
Whatever. Doesn't matter. Just any rabbit to start with. You tell me what the label is.
Yeah, I love it. Tell me what the label is.
Flower is, yeah. Looks like it is. I don't know if I did it right. You want to check it? Oh, this one. There, sorry. Good, okay. Okay, so what's the label for this rabbit, Joy?
Aggressive.
This is an aggressive rabbit, okay. All right, so a few things. These are general principles. I'm going to talk right now, and I'm going to just let him. This is a very scary situation for a rabbit. He has no place to hide. There are lights on him. There's a million eyes looking at him, and I'm standing over here. He doesn't know who in the world I am. I want to talk about a few concepts just to get him used to the sound of my voice. The first one here is the rabbit is your best instructor, and we say this about all animals. The animal is never wrong. When you're working with an animal, if things aren't going the way that you want them to go, you need to look at yourself and say, and even wrong is a label, but I'm going to use it for shorthand here, what am I doing wrong? The rabbit is never wrong. We need to adjust our behavior to work with them. We want to also, as Susan has said in her presentation, we want to give the rabbit as much control as possible and to use, and this may be different from what some of you may have heard, to use as little restraint as possible. We had a rabbit in our chapter that was killed during a nail cut because it was over-restrained by the veterinary personnel in the office that was doing the nail cut. The owner was there. The owner kept saying, please don't hold my rabbit like that. She doesn't like it. She'll struggle. And she was told that we're professionals. We know what we're doing. And a minute later, the rabbit started to do exactly what the woman said. And the person who was restraining her grabbed her tightly to keep the rabbit from dropping. And the owner heard the rabbit's back break. It was horrible. That's the year we made our nail cutting video, just so that that would never happen again. But it wasn't anybody's fault in the sense that nobody was being negligent or not watching carefully. It's just that people had been taught to over-restrain for so long at that point. People say, keep a tight grip on that rabbit. Watch out. The rabbit's going to jump off the table. Well, these guys are not stupid, and they don't jump off high places unless they're doing this in their home for fun and they're used to it. But most rabbits that I've worked with, and 99% of them, will not jump off a high place unless they're very clear about the distance and have done it before. Except if you create what I call the 9/11 phenomenon. In New York, and this is a term I use when I'm teaching people about this in New York, because everybody knows 9/11, people were jumping out of the windows of the World Trade Center, and people were looking up saying, I could never do that. Well, sure you could if your alternative was even worse. In your mind, you could always maybe land on a soft spot when you jump. There's always, it's not a sure death, which the fire in the room right behind you is. So the 9/11 phenomenon is just a way of shorthanding a situation where you have put the rabbit in a position where there's nothing left to lose. If you're grabbing that rabbit and the rabbit is struggling, the rabbit is going to escalate his attempts to get away, and there will come a point where he will force himself out of your head no matter what. A question here?
Peter Fisher.
Oh, hi, Peter.
I just wanted to comment that even the best of handling, you can still sometimes a rabbit break.
That's true. That's
So people in this room just need to be aware of that. It's not always assuming that it's poor handling, and we do our best. And
Yep.
it's the worst part
Yep.
of veterinary medicine when that happens.
Yep, it is. Or for us, the same thing can happen to us. And I'm not meaning to imply that that's a common situation. I'm just saying that, I'm using that as an example of a restraint that was over-restrained at that point. The attempt was to keep the rabbit from jumping, and the only way at that point...
That was different. Your situation was different. That was wrong behavior on the human's part.
But not intentionally so. Their intention was to restrain the rabbit tightly enough to keep her from jumping. And that tight restraint, at that point, the rabbit was desperate to get down. And in her little mind, the situation was, I got to get out of here because I'm going to die in this grip. So I'll try anything I can to get out of the grip. And we often create the same situation with these animals. We hold them tighter and tighter. I teach in a vet tech program in New York, and there was one rabbit lab when I walked in, and the students
immediately went back into the hedge. But, I mean, rabbits, if you don't alarm them, they won't act alarmed. They're not going to make desperate attempts to get away. This is, an example. Anyhow, okay, so I have avoid burritos here. That's shorthanding. Many of us have used bunny burritos in the past, and I don't mean that as a blanket statement to avoid burritos. But what I do mean is that burritos restrain the rabbit completely. And if you can get a job done without restraining the rabbit completely, that's even better. So use the least restraint you need to get the job done. There's one rabbit I had in New York where he's so difficult to handle that the first time our local vet saw him, he just said, "Ooh, that one's a keeper," meaning that I will always have him as a foster because nobody's going to tolerate his, and it's true, he's been a foster now for many years. But in one of the veterinary clinics we worked with, the vet felt very uneasy working with a rabbit that was that agitated anywhere. And so she always wanted to burrito him. Once you burrito that rabbit, he gets worse because now his whole body is restrained, and now he's desperately trying to get out. So I finally said, let me take him out of the burrito and I'll just gently hold him. And what I mean by gently holding him, I'm going to show you a little farther down here.
Can I say something really quick? Because talked about and used burritos for years and years. We had several thousand rabbit clients in our practice. And I have to say that everything Mary's showing you here today is true. I now do all my exams for my spay-neuter clinic once a month. I don't need anybody to assist me. These are rabbits I've never seen before. There are rabbits that do need assistance, I'm not saying not, but I'm just saying the less restraint we're talking about here has worked really, really well as a veterinarian who wouldn't believe it in the beginning. It works great.
It really does. And I put also LIMA, L-I-M-A, there's an abbreviation here. It's just a word that's widely used among trainers in certain situations. It's a helpful acronym for me because it helps me remember. It means least invasive, minimally aversive. So do something with an animal in the least invasive way you have to do it, and in the minimally aversive way you have to do it. Give the animal whatever break you can. And then I put foot power in here. Foot power means rabbits are animals who survive by fleeing or by kicking. Their feet are their defense. So the more we can allow the rabbit to have control of his own feet, the better off we are. And even with small things like turning a rabbit on a table. Now, I haven't met this rabbit yet. I'm going to let her get a chance. May I touch you? May I touch you? I'm going to ask you if you can. I know it's hard because they're so adorable and they're funny, but if you can, not laugh. It's a very loud sound coming at her from up here. Even though I'm tempted to do the same thing myself. Just to turn her back like that is really hilarious. But if you can keep it really quiet, yeah, I'm still here. I'm going to bring my hand in from the side and give her a chance to box at it or do whatever she needs to do. Thank you. Good girl. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Good girl. And what I'm doing here is this is what I call a hot stove technique, where you touch it and
hasn't been, quote, restrained in any significant way. She's starting to relax. She's not showing, I'm not sure in what way she's an aggressive rabbit in a cage. She probably has very different behavior in a cage. Yeah, but it's very quiet here. You can see that her body is relaxed, right? I don't know if she'll do it or not, and you know, I've had my share of nips, so I don't know if my poor ungloved hand today can take this, but I'm going to scratch her head a couple of times here, and I'm going to take the chance of putting my hand right next to her face. And I'm waiting. Okay, did you see her orient back toward me? She turned away, and then she brought her head back. As soon as she brings her head back, I stroke her in that place, and I rest my hand again. I'm waiting for a sign from her that it's okay to keep doing this, and some rabbits will just sit absolutely still, like, you know, when you're getting a massage and you say, don't stop, don't stop. You're sitting absolutely still, hoping the person will keep it up there. She oriented toward my hand. And what I'm doing now is I'm teaching her that anytime she wants patting on her head, she can turn toward my hand, and I will pat her, which gives her control over what's happening on her body. See, now she turned her head away, and she may just be watching something, I don't know, but there, she turned her head toward. I'm teaching her that anytime she turns her head toward my hand, she's going to get a little bit of a reward here, like that. So this is an example of the fourth point I hear, where I have do with instead of doing to. So often we have things in our mind that we're going to do to the rabbit. We're going to cut her nails. I'm going to do that to her. We're going to medicate her. I'm going to do that to her. If instead you can get your mentality around the idea of doing something with the rabbit, you'll behave very differently toward the rabbit. If I were to cut this rabbit's nails, for example, I use this kind of a clipper. I know Joy has a kind that she introduced me to last night, which I'm eager to try. Not today. I'm going to stick with what I know today. But she likes another kind. I really like this kind a lot. I don't depend on seeing the rabbit's blood vessel in the nail to cut the nail. I depend on the rabbit's feedback. I'm asking her with what I'm doing. Some of you, I think many of you own our nail video that we've been selling now for about 15 years. But I'll show you what I do. May I have a chair up here, if you wouldn't mind? This is a strange height to do. Okay. Did you see her body just relax? See that? Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Make all the comments.
I think I'm going to go back to the putting the hands on and taking off. Incredibly, incredibly important. This is for just about any species. We do this in every species. For me, it's almost a slight analogy to if you had a stranger come up and give you a hug. Maybe you thought, okay, they can give me a hug. That hug lingers too long. You're like, no. A quick hug, good. Long hug, no, thank you. My mom could hug me a long time. I know her really well, and I know she's not going to hurt me, but I don't know you. Okay, so it's sort of along think about how you would feel if you're having too much contact with a stranger for too long.
That's a really good example. Yeah. Just a little is enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see how I'll do this. I want to show you doing with instead of doing to. I want to show you how I would cut nails. This is not an ideal height. There's no table height that works for everything. So I might switch over to this chair, but I'm going to try her on the table first. May I move you this way? Okay, so much water. Good job. Good job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position her very close to me so that she's facing my dominant hand, and she may move away a time or two. If she moves away, I'm not going to grab her and pull her back. I'm just going to work her over quietly. And it's funny, once your rabbits get used to your doing this, good? Okay. Once your rabbits get used to you doing this, you don't need to pull them over anywhere. They're so relaxed, you can pretty much do what you want. So when I cut nails, is this okay here? People? Yeah. When I cut nails, I use this part of my arm to restrain the rabbit. I'm going to try to crouch down a little bit here. If this rabbit were on my lap, I'd be able to do it more easily. I'm going to just rest my hands lightly on her, and I'm going to use my elbow to bring her to myself like that. The restraint comes from right here. Can everybody see okay? Okay, the restraint comes from right there. It doesn't come from any grabbing or anything like that. I'm now going to lift just this paw here. I'm going to ask her to, just the paw. I'm going to leave the elbow on the ground. There we go. Her nails are black, so I don't know. And I'm going to put the clipper around the very tip of the nail and press down once or twice. Once, twice, and it's a good press. If I take it off, I've left a little white line on the nail. If she jumps when I press down, I'm too close to the blood vessel, whether I think I am or not. Whether I see a little white space or not. In the rabbit's opinion, I'm too close to her blood vessel, and it's her opinion that I'm interested, not mine. So I'm gonna put the nail clipper around the end of the nail. I'm gonna press down once, twice, 3 times. And I clip it because she didn't jump back. If she jumps back or pulls her paw back, then I know that in her opinion, I'm too close to the blood vessel. Once, twice, clip. Once, twice, clip. Once, twice, clip. I'm not taking off a lot, just the tip. The dew claw is always a pain in the neck, no matter where you do it from. And the light is not perfect. Okay, there. Now a little close, see that? She didn't, and when they pull their paw back just as you're cutting, you're probably not too close, but very often you'll get, especially with a lock rabbit, you know their hair is a little bit longer, you'll get a hair caught in there, and as you cut it, the hair pulls. But you can see that she's not doing this or any of those things that rabbits do. So that was good. That's one paw done now. To do the inside paw, I'm going to again ask her to come close to me like this, and I'm going to stand her on her hind legs and let the right paw dangle. Watch, I don't know if I can do this with the height of the table like this. So I'm going to lift her and have her lying down flat on my hand first. And then I'm going to raise her, kiss her head. I'm going to let this paw dangle like this. And I'm going to cut just one nail here because she's a black rabbit and the light is coming from this way for me. I can't see what I'm doing very well, but you'll get the idea. Press, press, clip. Maybe I can see it. Now I can see this one. I have to be able to see to get the clipper onto it. Press, press. Too much. See? Now I can look at that nail. There'll be a little white line on it, and I cut on the other side of the white line. No trauma, no blood vessel breaking. I don't need to see the blood vessel. And I'm at the tip of the nail, so, but she was uncomfortable there, so I cut on the other side.
And I would comment, medically wise, there may be something wrong with that nail as well. To take a closer look, it might be torn, it might be swollen at the tip. Take a little closer look. If you thought you were in, away from the quick, yeah. Sometimes it's a good way of finding that there actually is something, an injury or something there.
Yeah, I have a rabbit at home with a condition of fused digits, like this, syndactyly. And I didn't even know that when I first started cutting her nails. I picked up and I saw just one nail. I didn't separate the fur. And as I'm cutting, she's really uncomfortable. And I looked down and I saw, gee, her digits are fused together. She only has like 2 fingers. But anyway, that's a really good point. You do find medically significant things just by paying attention to the rabbit's feedback. So that's the front paws. You get the idea, right? So now I'm going to do her hind paws. I'm going to, again, I want her lying down in my hand, her front quarters in my hand, and I get her flat without a grip. I ask her to stand up like this, and I'm going to jiggle this paw, and I'm going to pull it out while I'm jiggling it. I'm jiggling it to distract her a little bit from the idea that I'm asking her to give up control of that foot. Remember, I now have 2 feet. I'm trying to mimic a sense of control for her by keeping this hand flat. My thumb just rests up here. There's no grasp of the rabbit at all. She's just lying flat in my hand. So I'm going to, may I have this? Thank you. There we go. Put your left foot in. Out, and you do hokey pokey. There we go. And she'll just leave that paw there. And I like to have a little water, like, when you mat down a kid's hair. I like to have a little water to press down the hair around the nail, but you don't need that. Press, press, clip. Press. I'm really tight on this. She needed that one cut off. Press, clip. And I put the clipper down between the nails to give me the opportunity to separate the toes from one another and to see the length of the nail. And now I'm going to put this foot back, always being aware of where the rabbit's weight is. And you can see, as soon as she's unbalanced, she'll balance herself. And so, sorry about that. So I put her foot so she can really balance on it, and I roll her weight onto that foot to jiggle this one and ask her to give me this one. Thank you. Good girl. So you get the idea. I'm going to cut a few nails here. We have limited time, so I want to watch what I'm doing with time. Okay. All right, well, I won't cut all her nails then. relax and just think of what you're doing in the moment. If you intend to gut this rabbit's nails, then you're going to proceed no matter what. And what I want you to do is to let go of that intention and relax enough to just think, I'm going to ask the rabbit if I can cut this one nail. And I'm going to listen to what she says before I decide to do anything else. And that will slow you down and back you up, and it will make the rabbit much more peaceful in your presence. Letting go of your intentions is huge for me. To let go of the rabbit if she changes her mind. If she starts struggling, start from scratch. Easy enough to do.
Which is the opposite of what many of us have been taught for years. If they start struggling, as you were saying earlier, it's often grab tighter, which is where you get into trouble with just about any species, including children.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just don't, it doesn't mean you're, that you have horrible technique or something like, oh, she's changed her mind, let her go. And you're thanking her for giving you and some information. Thank you, I hear you, remember, is this okay? I hear you, thank you, okay, I'm gonna let you go. There's your reinforcer for letting me know, okay?
Okay. And let go. If the rabbit struggles, let go immediately. Get your hands off her. Just let her go. And start over. Because that she's letting you know in a very clear way that she's uncomfortable with something. You can't identify it yet. And you may say to yourself, well, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Well, not as far as you understand, but the rabbit's letting you know she's uncomfortable with something. Just let her go and start over. And I have here 12 Tri-Carlos, because we had a bunny in our foster system who had been living outdoors as a feral rabbit for a long time, also a pitch black bunny. And he came in and he did not want to be picked up ever. But he had to go to the vet every once in a while. So to pick him up, he would be running loose in my hallway, and I would slowly walk after him and follow him and lean over as if to pick him up, and he would run away. I would go slowly again and lean over, and he would run away. And I would always let him run away. And sometimes he would allow me to put my hands on him first, and then he would run away. It took 12 tries, almost every time, to pick up Carlos. And we called him 12 Tri-Carlos after a while. And when people would take care of him, when I'd be out speaking at a conference and I have volunteers coming in, people would report that, well, he let you pick him up, but not right away. Yeah, 12 tries. On the 12th try, and he was probably just tired by then. It wasn't even, no, really, it's just, I mean, but I wasn't pursuing him. He never ran away from me, so to speak. By then, he knew that no matter how long this went on, eventually I would pick him up. And he kind of just said, oh, for Pete's sake, go ahead on the 12th try. Not a happy thing for him, but, you do have to take rabbits to the vet sometimes. So, okay, and use stillness. I do this a lot. I just rest my hands on the rabbit like this, perfectly still, before I start working with them. I don't ever approach and pick them up right away. I introduce myself by using stillness. Really important concept and very low key. Use pressure and release, which I showed you in the beginning, where you're kind of doing this, pressing on the side, and release. And what you're communicating to the rabbit there is that the rabbit never needs to get away from you. You're going to take your hands away without any further ado. The rabbit doesn't have to do anything. So if you put your hand, before you pick up a rabbit, if you press the rabbit like this, you're basically saying to the rabbit, I'd like to do something to your body that involves pressure. Is that okay? If you're pressing on a rabbit and she moves away, let her move away. Start again, ask again. And you're basically having a conversation with the rabbit with your hands. Talk softly out loud about what you're doing. I will say things like, and people say, oh, you think you can speak English? Oh, they can't speak English, but I say things like, will you let me pick you up? Is this okay? May I do this? Because it keeps me focused on what I need to be focused on, which is asking permission, respecting this rabbit's communications. Develop a conversation with your hands. I just talked about that. Get permission. I just talked about that.
Do you want
And
the
then,
dog to be?
yeah, the dog video, the conversation with Ed. We have a very short piece of video from our local shelter where I was asked to give a presentation on dog handling based on my rabbit techniques. And this was a very, very traumatized dog that had been nipping and biting people. And people said, don't go near her face, she's going to nip you. So I went into her cage and just did some rabbit stuff with her. And am I in everybody's
Yeah,
mind?
you might, yeah.
I just want to watch it. I want to be careful of the rabbit backing
You
up.
tell me when you're ready. Ready?
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. She moved away, I took my hand away. I put it down, she's approaching it, and then she backs away, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe she didn't want that.
And you said she was very aggressive, she
Yeah,
was very
yeah.
difficult.
Difficult dog. So I'm trying a little light pressure. As soon as she moves she comes back, she's letting me know. Rabbits do the same thing, I'm sure we all recognize this. Now I'm moving my hand to ask her to tell me when it's okay to touch her. And she's clearly telling me, yeah. I know, that sounds like a dog, So you see how she's making herself very, very clear, and I'm giving her the opportunity to do that. That's really all I'm trying to make, the point I'm trying to make. And did you notice what this rabbit did? When she turned around? I don't know if you noticed in the middle of the video, she turned around, she wanted contact with her head again, kind of interesting. Okay, and I just wanted to comment, that's a lot like sports where you have preparation and follow through. I don't just go in and lift the rabbit. I go in and with preparation for what I'm going to do, just like with a golfer, you line it all up. I'm doing that with the rabbit's body. And with follow through, when I put them down, I don't just dump them down. I put them down hind feet first because of foot power, and then I leave my hands on for a second and gently remove my hands. So there's never any violence. It's right here. And I invite the rabbit, when I'm lifting a rabbit, I invite her onto my hands, have her 4/4 on my hand, just by gentle touch, as I demonstrated. And we have a little...
Why don't you demonstrate it first, though?
Which
Because
part?
this is the last video. Demonstrate how you pick them up.
Okay.
For everybody.
I know you found a place to go, didn't you? And now I'm going to ask her if I can move her away. I want to show you about inviting her onto my hands. I know, sweetheart. I know, sweetheart. Yeah. What a good girl. I'm trying to move 2 feet at a time. Leaving the hind feet on the table gives her a sense of power. May I pick you up? What a good girl you are. Are you balanced here? And now I'm going to put my hands underneath her absolutely flat. I'm going to do it slowly so that she can resist if she wants, and she doesn't. And when I pick her up, let's say, if I want to pick her up facing me, I will invite her onto my hand this way, and I will see if she's willing to lie flat like that, and to arch her back like this. Or an arch back is a bunny that can't run away. Their normal shape is a curved back. An arch back will allow me to put my hand down here, and then pick her up like that, and tuck her under my arm. That's her permission when she arches her back. And when I put her down, I'll put her hind feet down first and let her have foot power. And we have one quick video to show, and then we're finished.
Yeah. So this last video is me. So you'll feel really good about when you feel like you can't do these things immediately. She's trying to teach me how to do that right there. And then we have some comments to make as we're going. Because, and really quickly before I show this video, it's just 5 minutes and we started 5 minutes late. So
there.
So there. I get my 5 minutes. There's a wonderful new group that's just started. Dr. Marty Becker is in charge of it. It's a fear-free group for veterinarians. He's forming his advisory board and everything now. I'm on there, Mary's on there, some other exotic animal people as well as dog and cat. And the idea is over time to develop certification and training for veterinarians to be able to handle animals in the lowest stress, least intrusive way possible for all the things that have to happen there. I love my profession. They're wonderful people, but I have to say we were not trained with any of these kind of techniques. It just wasn't there. It's not like we're bad or awful, of course, as Peter pointed out. Veterinarians are very caring people, but we're reaching a point now where we're hopefully going to get some training and get this, these kinds of things into the veterinary practice and make everybody's life easier, because the animals' blood values will be better if they're not all stressed out. Yes, I mean, we know that already in certain species. Injury to staff, won't get staff bitten. We won't get any clients bitten or scratched. It's better for the animal all the way around to get a great relationship with the animal. Since I've changed how I've handled things, I have rabbits that actually like to come and see me, So this is all really important. So we're just going to watch this video and sort of talk through it about what can happen when you're trying to train veterinary staff, like the very goal-oriented person that I am. What can happen?
And I can do temperature taking demos during the break if you want. I don't want to hold up other speakers.
And I just
Oh, sorry. Might help if I...
make sure she's calm. And then I face her toward me,
not by lifting her up, but by keeping her feet on the floor and just sliding her around a little bit. And then I'm gonna ask her permission to pick her up by sliding my hands. She wants to move under, sliding my left
Now,
hand.
she's
under her
demoing the
foot,
same thing that you just
getting her
saw.
to lie down in my hand when my hand is flat like that. And then I ask her to arch her back a little bit by pushing down. See how it's just slightly arched there? Once rabbits do that, they will let you pick them up like this. And then you tuck them into the football hole. Like that. Yeah. And then if you want to put them down, you can actually, everybody says, oh, put them down butt first. I turn them toward wherever I want them to go, and then they generally will jump down themselves without, like, they're never flail, and that's good. You're just gently touching
Oh, so
them.
this is me.
And
Sorry I
what
cut
I
everybody's
do
head off, but
is that I increase pressure on their body, and then I take my hand away. Now,
this
on
was
this side,
several years ago when I was just trying to learn this. Badly.
I do it like this. Let me show you. So I'll put my hand here to keep her hindquarters down while I do that. Again, now I'll slide her hindquarters while I'm keeping her front quarters down. And then I'll do this little pressure thing like this. And you can bring your hands away, it doesn't matter, just to give her the idea. And I'm gonna touch her, there's nothing to run away from. And then I'll maybe jiggle her a little bit to get her in my hand like that. And then once she lets you arch her back, she'll let you pick her up and put her down feet. Feet first. And let her.
So I can tell you already I was getting tense.
Good. Just watch what's happening to her back nails. There, you did.
My hands are not nearly as relaxed as hers. I'm using my fingers more than my
Just give
hands.
her the pressure message, like something's going to be touching your body. It's not going to hurt.
I'm not sure how hard I should be pressing.
Good.
And I've been around thousands of rabbits at this point. I've never broken a
When
back.
you feel she's more or less stable, you ask her to put your left
Luckily.
hand under her thorax, not her middle
And you can
section
see
where
she's
it's
reacting to me. I can tell you I'm tense.
She's not giving
If you can't see it, I can just tell you I'm tense.
Right.
And that rabbit is also telling you I'm
And it could be
tense.
jiggling, yeah, like that. And then I slide my left hand underneath, and then, see, what's the difference? Well, there, you got it now. And ask her to arch her back.
And if you notice,
Without
I'm actually,
pulling out. You do not want to be pulling those feet out.
I don't know if you heard of that. I had my hand behind her elbows. I'm pushing her feet forward. That's uncomfortable. I'm grabbing her.
That's good, now that's good. If you could ask her to stretch her back out a little bit, that's it, good. You pull your hand forward without
No.
pulling.
I'm unsure of what I'm doing. I'm a little nervous because it looks a little scary to me, the way she picked him up, right?
I feel, I
Yep.
have to stop for a second because I feel really uncomfortable.
Help your back and help.
So I asked Mary to do this, to show me on my arm what it felt like
So
for
it's
that
lighter
pressure,
than
which
it
is a nice thing to do with
Very,
clients.
very
looks. Lighter than it looks.
Very light, and I might do this.
Okay.
It's very light.
That, we'll do that.
Bring your arm up here and let Mary demo on you.
Yeah, so that's one issue here. So
So-
let me do it again. And, just don't say anything this time and let me try to self-correct. And then and when I'm ready, I'm gonna ask you a question.
So the point of that, me saying, don't say anything, let me self-correct, sometimes you demo and give the person a little bit of space to do it and comment. They'll see what the rabbit's doing. Sometimes when you're listening to instructions, you're trying to do something, I'm really goal-oriented, I like to follow recipes to the letter, blah, blah, blah. You're like going, oh my God, and then you lose track of what the rabbit's actually doing. Mary's a brilliant teacher. But this is what you're going to have. So to finish that, I actually did complete it. Eventually the tape ran out. But, but my point here is veterinarians and veterinary staff are used to doing things quickly. And they need to do things quickly. I mean, they've got a busy practice. Things have got to move along. And if you're eventually going to try to introduce these things, or you're standing in the room with them and they've got one of your foster rabbits and, they're handling it in a certain way, this is going to take time, patience, compassion for the veterinary and veterinary staff, They need to see that it works. You know, you learning these techniques really well and demonstrating it to them and see the difference in how the animal reacts, not that you're the caregiver and they're going to be good with you and not with the vets. Any veterinarian and veterinary staff can learn these. They're not difficult. Learning to slow down a little bit, it's hard because we are taught to move along, get it done efficiently, and the way we were taught is the less we were taught, don't do long restraint, but we do it harder and faster rather than taking just a few more minutes and developing a relationship, so next time it isn't even worse than it was this time, okay? So just have some patience around that, because veterinarians do care very deeply about what's going on with their patients, and it's devastating if anything happens that's, you know, untoward. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that.
So that's it. I don't know if we have time for questions. Yes, Margot?
I just want to say that, so Mary is a licensed veterinary technician, correct?
Correct.
And you teach veterinary tech students in New York City. But I also want to point out that Jennifer Sears, who is here somewhere, she teaches rabbit handling at a vet tech college in Rhode Island. And then Chris Starr and I teach the rabbit handling at 2 different colleges.
And Joy has an opportunity now. She's going to be teaching a class very soon at a vet school or vet tech school. I'm not sure.
Fabulous. And I just want to say that to the educators in this room, we do have materials, some of which we got from Mary, and that's how this whole thing started. So I got materials from Mary, and that's how I started teaching it. And then Jennifer got the materials from me. And I just want to say for